Now I'm going to show you how to actually find the possible rational roots. As I was telling you before, we need the factors of the constant divided by the factors of the leading coefficient. Well, in this case, our constant happens to be 18, and the leading coefficient is going to be 1, and we need to factor them. So if I factor 18, I'm going to have 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6, and there's nothing else that factors 18. If I factor 1, because 1 is just the number 1, we know that 1 times 1 are the only factors for 1, but we don't use 1 as a factor of it. Therefore, this is enough. Now we need to create the fractions that are going to determine which are the possible rational roots. So you create a fraction between one of these factors and the factors of this. But in this case, we just have 1. So we're going to have 1 over 1, and we don't have anything else there. 2 over 1, 3 over 1, 6 over 1. Then I'm going to go to 9 over 1 and 18 over 1. If I simplify this here, my possible rational roots, the possible rational roots are each of these numbers here in their simplified form with a plus and a minus. So I'm going to put plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3, plus or minus 6, plus or minus 9, and plus or minus 18. All these are possible zeros, possible solutions, possible roots for the function. But which of this works? So our question now is, how do we find the actual roots? What do we have to do? Well, we already learned synthetic division, and my job now is to check each of these possibilities. So the first one that I'm going to check is positive 1. Now you get each of the coefficients that are here, assuming that they are in descending order. So this is the coefficient of x cubed, coefficient of x squared, coefficient of x to the first power, and our constant is right here. Now that we have this here, drop the 1 first. If you do this here, now you gotta multiply 1 times 1, that gives me 1. Add them, 11. 1 times 11 gives you 11. This gives you 36. 1 times 36 produces 36. If I combine this, because both of them are positives, this gives me 14. And we carry 1, 3, 4, plus 1 is 54. This is our remainder. We didn't get 0. Therefore, right now we know that x equals 1 does not work. We need to check the next one, which is negative 1. If I do negative 1, I'm going to write these same coefficients, 1, 10, 25, and 18. I drop the 1, so I'm going to have negative 1 times 1 gives me negative 1. Combine this gives me 9. Negative 1 times 9 gives me negative 9. This produces 16. Negative 1 times 16 produces negative 16. And if I combine this gives me positive 2. Very close to a 0, but we didn't get 0 as a remainder. Therefore, x equals negative 1 does not work. The next thing that I'm going to check is positive 2. I'm doing my list of possibilities. Positive 2, I still use the same coefficients, 1, 10, 25, 18. Drop the 1. 2 times 1 gives me 2. Combine these two numbers, that gives me 12. 2 times 12 is 24. If we combine this gives you 49. And there's no way that this is going to come up to be 0 as the remainder. 2 times 49 gives you 98. If we combine this, 8 times 8 is 16, and we carry 1. So that will be 10, 11, 116. So that's our remainder. So this is also telling us that x equals 2 does not work. If I do the next one, which is negative 2, now I'm going to have 1, 10, 25, 18. Drop the 1 first. That gives me a 1 right here. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. This, when you combine them, gives you positive 8. Negative 2 times 8 gives you negative 16. Combine this, that gives you positive 9. If you multiply this times this gives you negative 18. And we got or we're getting 0 as a remainder. So this is already telling us that x equals -2 is a 0 of the function. So we have one of the three possible solutions that we could have. Now, how do we find the other two? Well, that's when you rewrite this in its as an equation. So we have 1x squared plus 8x plus 9, make it equal to 0. Now at this point, we don't need to write once, but I just wrote it here so that you can actually see how it looks in the equation form. So now my job is to solve this equation. If I were, the first thing that you gotta try is factoring. So by factoring, you can use the box over here. If you use a box, it doesn't work here. It does not work because 9 is the number that I'm going to try to factor, and the only factors for 9 are 1 times 9, 3 times 3, but one when you combine 1 and 9, that gives you 10. When you combine 3 and 3, that gives you 6. So the other only possibility that we have for this is the quadratic formula. So if I use the quadratic formula, x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. If you use this here, you should be able to get the other answers. But you need the values for a, b, and c. A is in front of x squared, is a number in front of x squared. B is the coefficient of the linear term, which is 8, and C is the constant 9. If I replace them in here, then I should be able to get my answer. That's -8 plus or minus 8 to the second power, because that's B, 4 times A times C. So A right now is 1, C is 9. Divide all of this by 2 times A, which is 1. This gives me -8 plus or minus. When you combine this here, that gives you 64. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 9 times 9 is 36. Subtract them. And now on the bottom, 2 times 1 just gives me 2. Now, if I continue doing this here, simplifying this piece, the radical piece, I'm going to get -8 plus or minus 64 minus 36 produces, that's going to be 28 inside of the radical. And then all of this is being divided by 2. Now, at this point, we have -8 plus or minus the square root of 28 over 2. Your job is to simplify the square root of 28. In order for you to simplify the square root of 28, I'm going to come to the side. You must factor 28. 7 times 4 is one way to do it, and then 2 times 2 is for 4. Therefore, the square root of 28 in its simplified form, because we have a pair of 2's, is 2 times the square root of 7. If I come here to this answer, now I have -8 plus or minus 2 square root of 7 over, or being divided by 2. Everything is being divided by 2. Now, at this point, I know that this is a fraction that I can reduce. I can divide everything that is here by 2. If I divide everything that is here by 2, my final answer comes out to be x equals 2 goes into -8, or -8 divided by 2 is -4, plus or minus 2 divided by 2 gives you 1, which is the square root of 7 over 1. We don't write a 1 on the bottom of the fraction. So now I have actually obtained my 2 other roots in here. So my final piece is to actually write down which are the actual zeros. And that's when I'm going to come over here. And since I have my possible rational roots here, now I can say that the zeros of this, and I'm not going to write of this here. So we're just going to say that the actual zeros are, and then you just write them in here. The first one that we got is x equals -2 from this piece right here. This gave us the first one. So we're going to write x equals -2. And I'm going to split this apart. These are the other two. X equals -4 plus the square root of 7, and x equals -4 minus the square